Hi, this is Craig Coleman with a random show and quotes guest interview taken directly from a past airing. Listen close and try to pretend it's good and you actually enjoy it.
Craig Coleman, I love your show.
Craig Coleman.
What you will hear now will bring back memories to some, will open up new fields to others, but most important, will keep alive to all and for all time what can really never die. The many moods of
Craig Coleman.
His name is Steve Kubby, and he's the author of The Politics of Consciousness. He's the founder of the American Medical Marijuana Association and a former Libertarian candidate for the governor of California. He and his wife have successfully defended their right to grow 265 marijuana plants for personal use and helped fund Proposition 215. Now, I told you, they're serious into this marijuana business. And I have a feeling that's right up the alley of the listeners of the show and quotes. So let's welcome Steve Kubby. Steve.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing today, my friend?
Great.
Thanks for coming on my show, too. Now, I had a quick question for you right off the bat. Knowing what you know about marijuana and about the medical grade stuff that you deal with on a daily basis, what would you say to a guy like me who stopped smoking weed because it was making me anxious and paranoid and just overall no longer really high and happy?
Well, I tell you to stop smoking biker weed that just gets you a cheap high up and drops you and crashes you down, and get some real medical grade cannabis and see the difference, because real medical grade cannabis shouldn't make you do any of those things.
Really? Now, how do I go about getting some of that?
Well, if you're in a state that's passed a medical marijuana law, then you basically need a written recommendation from your doctor. But regardless of where you live, if you have a diagnosis for a serious illness from a doctor, you can usually use that to mount a medical necessity defense, arguing that it was necessary to break the marijuana laws because you're sick, it's the only medicine that works for you, and you're saving your life. And the law will recognize that in most cases, except at the federal level.
Okay, so I don't have an illness, so I would feel a little bit odd.
You know what I suggest then?
Yeah.
Get involved with the legalization of cannabis and meet other activists who share your interests, and your problems will be solved.
Oh, you're saying that they'd be holding, basically.
I'm saying that they would be able to provide you with the information that you would need to take care of your own situation.
Now, I notice that you're calling it cannabis, not marijuana.
Marijuana is a slang term that has racial overtones to it. We called marijuana medical marijuana when we passed 215 because we didn't want anyone accusing us of trying to cover it up or change the name or something. But the real name for this substance, the scientific name, the name that medical journals have called it by for years, is cannabis. There's two forms: cannabis sativa, which is a very uplifting, euphoric kind of a plant, versus indicas, which tend to be more of a pain reliever, munchie-generating kind of a medicine.
So you know your business when it comes to this stuff, man. It's very encouraging. It makes me kind of yearn to go smoke a bowl, you know? And
well, my good friend Dr. Robert Melamede, who is the chairman of the biology department at the University of Colorado at Boulder, just published a paper that's received widespread world recognition. I just saw a brief about it on CNN. And in Bob's paper, Dr. Melamede's paper, he explains that the evidence shows that although marijuana and tobacco may appear to be the same, nobody has ever gotten cancer from marijuana. There appears to be something in marijuana that prevents people from getting cancer and actually helps them heal problems in the airway and such. So that comes just a week after research was, a scientific peer-reviewed research study showed that marijuana not only does not kill brain cells, but actually causes new brain cells to grow.
Can you imagine that? That's unbelievable to me. Now, why wouldn't like the government or the medical bodies of the world pick up on stuff like that and run with it?
Well, it's very simple. Our marijuana laws are all written and passed by alcoholics.
So what are they? They're bitter?
They're out to lunch. They have no idea what marijuana is about, and even if they do, they don't dare speak out against it because all of their power support comes from World War II, football, baseball generation that's just squatting on the rest of us. But let's talk about the history of cannabis. If the current drug laws were in place when Jefferson and Washington were around, they would have been arrested, convicted, and sentenced to death. They grew so much hemp, which isn't distinguished by the U.S. government from marijuana, that they would have qualified for the death penalty under the current pot laws.
Our highest officials in the land at the time could have been killed.
Murdered would have been a better word, but there is no legal basis for the marijuana laws. There is no authority. They always duck out of any question. Here in Canada, in fact, the law has fallen, but they lie about the effects of marijuana. They lie about their authority to arrest people just for planting a seed and growing a plant. I have to ask, did God screw up? Is that what these people are telling us, that God made this mistake with marijuana that it now has to be eradicated and we have to be kept from it? Who do these people think they are that they're smarter than God? God is God. God made this plant, gave us this plant, and these half-wits have the gall to tell us that it's illegal. That doesn't hold up under the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or any civilized legal system. It's just pure bullshit that people are being arrested, and it is a culture war. That's what's really going on.
And it's a shame because it's so blatantly in the face of things like tobacco. I mean, it's like insulting the intelligence of the average individual by saying, okay, this is illegal for whatever reason, and...
Oh, come on, everything's illegal now. The only response that the current power system has is to make something illegal, hire more police, catch more people doing it, fill more jails. What kind of a solution is that? That's no solution at all. It is a measure of how big a failure the American system has become because of their perverse prohibition against marijuana. They've gone to such extremes to eradicate this plant that we now have a country with 5% of the world's population jailing 25% of its population. We've never seen anything like this. These people are nutty. In fact, if you were to slice open their brains, it'd be so full of holes from all the alcohol that they drink, they'd look like Swiss freaking cheese. And
at the same time, they promote and allow everyone to go buy cigarettes and kill themselves, which just doesn't make sense, you know?
The drug czar came by when I was doing some speaking, and I'm founder and national director of the American Medical Marijuana Association, but a group of high school kids, they don't know what that is, right? They know that the drug czar just came and gave them a speech, and I'm up next. And, the first thing I said is, let me see the hands of all those people that think they've been lied to today by the drug czar. Every single hand went up.
Yeah, they did, I bet.
I mean, they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So what is the drug czar and the government officials so afraid of?
They're afraid that their corrupt, stupid, failed way of life is going to be rejected by those of us that think that there's a better solution in the world using hemp than using their dumbass ideas about filling the sky full of burned petroleum.
You're pissed off about this stuff, aren't you?
Well, it's time for them to move their fat ass out of the way.
Yeah.
They're nothing but an obstacle. They have nothing creative to say. Their solution to everything is more guns, more wars, more prisons, more jails, and it gets old. We have so many wonderful, creative people in the hemp world, people that are ready to build building materials and fuels and clothing, and we have so many wonderful answers waiting for us. And maybe we're full of it, but we deserve a chance to live our lives as we see fit.
Sure, I don't disagree with that. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
And their unsustainable, toxic, constipated way of life is only exists only because they have so many guns pointed at anyone that disagrees with them. And it's time for them to just move their fat ass off the road and let the rest of us go on with our lives.
So basically, it all boils down to threatening their way of life and their control
No,
structure.
it's even more than that, because let's look at their way of life. The World War II generation is such a fraud. They say that they freed the world with World War II. I'm sorry, but 20 million people were caught behind the Iron Curtain, enslaved for decades. How is that a victory? They're so full of themselves that they saved the world that they think they have to save the world now. Well, the world doesn't need them. They can't even take care of their own backyard. If you're a hurricane victim, you don't need anyone to explain to you that the government has fallen flat on its real responsibilities because it's having too much fun raiding people, making them, scaring them half to death, and beating their chest on how good they feel afterwards. Well, we're doing something. You're not doing anything but harming people.
And you know about that personally. I mean, you're not from Canada, although you live there now. You were kind of ran out of California, weren't you?
Well, I ran for governor of California. I received over 70,000 votes, and immediately after that, I was arrested for a law that I had helped to pass. I was forced. They tried to extort $200,000 out of us for bail, and in the end, we proved that we were right and they were wrong. But who needs that? Who needs to live in a place where your tax money goes to pay poorly trained police that have nothing better to do than to go on marijuana raids? It is so much better here in Canada, where I have a license, and if an officer chooses to make an issue with me, I show him the license and tell him to piss off.
That's funny. It's
after I blow a nice big fatty in his face.
Oh, really?
Well, it just it's time. We've learned to live with them. They need to learn to live with us.
Sure.
And I actually have a letter at my website people can look at. It's issued from the highest drug official in Canada saying Mr. Kubby can smoke his medicine wherever he chooses.
So you can grow it there in Canada, you can take it with you in places, and you can smoke it wherever you want.
I can grow 137 plants. I can store 13 pounds. I can travel anywhere in Canada with 3 pounds. I flash my card, and I don't even need to flash my card. The police all know my car, my license. They all smile and wave. They don't want any trouble with me.
Yeah. I mean, you're armed with the law on your side. You're armed with the truth in mind and the facts on hand, so they don't even bother anymore.
Well, as one officer told my wife, he said, "You know the law better than we do."
That's true.
And it makes them nervous, as it should. As a private citizen, this is a point I make in my book, and that's why we're doing this, The Politics of Consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's available through Amazon or Lumpanics, or most bookstores can order it for you. But in the book, I say 2 things. Question authority, because that's what a healthy society needs. And think for yourself, because if you're going to depend on the government to do it for you, good luck.
Yeah, you're screwed. Let me ask you this. Are you high right now?
Well, I don't know what you mean by high, but...
Have you smoked?
Have I smoked? I probably had a half a dozen big, fat, high-potency joints. But I've been tested while high at UCLA. They have a test called cognitive function.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to getting high, my cognitive function score was in the 70th percentile, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
After smoking 2 grams of medical-grade cannabis, I scored off scale in over half of the categories, 99.9 percentile. That was on memory. That was on memorizing a set of numbers and reversing them, letters, all kinds of different measures of how well my brain functions. Now, why does my brain function in the 99th highest percentile when most people smoke pot and feel like it just makes them dumb? Well, it's because when you first start smoking pot, it is disruptive. But in the most recent studies on brain cell growth, the researcher, Shang, at the University of Saskatchewan, has hypothesized that intermittent use of cannabis can be confusing, but regular high-dosage use of cannabis stimulates the growth of brain cells and actually increases mental acuity and relieves depression. These are all powerful statements made in a peer-reviewed journal.
Not causes depression, cures it.
That was his scientific finding based on his studies.
Wow. So there's a major difference, as pointed out in the very beginning, between medical-grade cannabis and what you can buy down on the street. There's just a night and day difference, right?
Absolutely. And if there wasn't prohibition, everyone would be able to easily and inexpensively afford or grow fresh, potent cannabis that would make them question why they would ever smoke the swag that they were smoking before. I've learned about it, others have learned about it, but when you realize what this plant is capable of doing when it's grown properly, when it's cured properly, curing is very important. Most people don't know anything about curing, but it's very important that the moisture be extracted slowly from the cannabis so that there's always enough moisture in the cannabis that it's soothing. If you're coughing when you smoke cannabis, it's not medical grade. If you smoke medical grade cannabis, you're not going to be coughing.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I've neglected myself in the past.
A lot of people have, and come to British Columbia and sample what British Columbia has to offer. There's speakeasies, there's smokeasies, there's all kinds of places in Vancouver that it's easy to get good quality cannabis and meet members of the cannabis community.
Really, you can buy it out in public and smoke it out in public like a bar?
I know if you go to the marijuana bookstore in Hastings Street, people come right up to you and sell it to you, and you can go next door to the Amsterdam Cafe and smoke it in there. They have a room that vents everything out, and then go buy a tasty treat.
That sounds like a blissful experience to me. I might have to vacation in Vancouver next time I take a trip. You know, I've never been. That would be a pretty good excuse. It almost sounds like, Steve, that you encourage the use of this substance at this level.
Well, why not? I mean, we know that, for example, a big fear you hear is, well, what if people smoke and then drive? Well, actually, I wrote a book about this, Why Marijuana Should Be Legal, and I quote the studies in Europe, in the United States. Every study that's ever been done finds the same thing. Marijuana drivers are safer than all other categories of drivers, including people who use nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might ask, how can that be? Well, if you think about it, if you've been in an accident or come close to getting an accident, it was because you were in a rush or you were stressed. What are the two things that happen when you smoke pot? You slow down
Yeah.
and you relax. So you might only be driving 10 miles an hour, but you're not going to be a danger to anyone. Okay? So we know that people who smoke pot and drive are actually safer, more careful drivers than anyone else. That doesn't hold true, by the way, if you mix alcohol.
Absolutely.
If you mix alcohol with cannabis, it's actually deadlier than just alcohol by itself.
Sure.
We know that from the Utah Power and Light study that's quoted in my book, Politics of Consciousness, that when the Utah Power and Light Company decided they wanted to drug test everyone in the company, someone pointed out that that would be way too expensive, several $100s per person. So they decided to study those people that, for one reason or another, they had found out did use marijuana, and then develop a profile so they could identify other potential marijuana users and then drug test them. So they did the study, and the profile ended up like this. Less sick days, more promotions, better liked by fellow employees, happier family life.
Gee, Steve, what is the holdup then? It's like every marijuana study comes up with positive effects of the whole deal and different types of positive effects each time. What's the holdup?
Well, we really are looking at a collision of two very different civilizations that have very different morality and are very distrustful of each other. The current industrial age has its own morality, which is to be distinguished from the agricultural age. You know, the agricultural people, the people on the farm, they think the people in the industrial age are very, very sinful. And so it's the same with the industrial age. They see the people in the information age as being immoral, sinful. And indeed, the information age is highly corrosive and subversive to everything in the brick-and-mortar world. But our world is cyberspace, and they can't control us and milk us and order us around and jail us in cyberspace the way they can in the brick-and-mortar world. So they're forcing us to evolve. They're forcing us to go into this new world of cyberspace and create our society there, because they block every gate, they hold every lever in their brick-and-mortar world. And that's a good thing. I mean, evolution proceeds by having predators attack them and force them to evolve and become smarter and fleeter and faster. And we are certainly smarter. You know, we are able to hold off two governments and do exactly what we want to do here in Canada, because whenever they cite me for something, we go into their databases and show that they're not only misquoting their own laws, but there's other laws that say that they're prohibited from doing that. And it drives them crazy now that we have just as quick or better access to their legal authorities, and we can beat them at their own game.
They should give you a badge.
Well, they don't need to give me anything. We just as soon stand back and let their world crumble. It's unsustainable. Nobody is enamored with it. Everybody's just waiting for the next thing to come along. And the next thing to come along is for people to recognize that government has no more business in our life than the church did back in the Middle Ages. You know, everyone put their confidence in the church that they were experts, they would do the right thing, and they gave us the Inquisition. We put our confidence in government, and they gave us the drug war. The only thing we can have confidence in is ourselves.
God bless you, man. And speaking of cyberspace, you've got this website, Kubby.com, Kubby.com, where it shows videos of the master farmer that you've become as a result of your enhanced freedoms, I guess you'd say, or properly relegated freedoms. And this is some amazing stuff that I believe that the people that are listening right now would have a really good time checking out. How the hell did you become, I mean, was it a lot of trial and error to get those buds to look like that?
Every top breeder, grower, seed expert, advanced nutrients, they all came knocking on my door asking how they could help, and the end result was what you see in those videos.
So that's in your house, right? Or is that someplace
Yeah,
else?
yeah.
Oh my God! How do you just not stay down there every day? I guess you don't need to when it's within an arm's reach, but it's just like, I mean, you've got a forest in your garage or wherever that is in your house. That's just amazing.
Well, that's just one room, eh? I've got other rooms for breeding as well. So that's just part of what I'm doing.
Do you have people knocking down your doors wanting to help a lot, or is it a relatively private thing?
Amongst the breeders and advanced nutrients and everything, we've gotten to know each other, and we all work for the same goals.
So it's not like let's go hang out at Steve's house because we can burn and get high. It's a more of a politically motivated thing.
I have a very happy family life, and I have 2 small girls, and they really don't see much of that. They just see people coming to visit me. We go into the garage, and they don't see much smoking and toking. They really just see a lot of talk about genetics and breeding and nutrients, and they see lots of buds. They know what buds look like.
So you don't feel any type of odd pressure to keep this from your small children, or how you will kind of bring it to them properly as they get older and become more aware of things? I mean, what's your
Well,
plan?
I've explained it to them that that this is a very beneficial plant, that people still don't understand. There's a lot of ignorance about it, and if there's any traces of it in their blood, people will try to take them from us. And they understand exactly what that means. I can tell you that in my book, The Politics of Consciousness, I discuss my son coming to me when he was 15 and asking me about LSD. And I told him that rather than have a stranger introduce him to it, I would introduce him to it. And I explained how we climbed a 12,000-foot peak and dropped together, and what we experienced together. That's in my book.
No kidding. You did that with your 15-year-old son?
Yes.
That's a pretty hard introduction. I mean, that's not the easiest drug to take.
I can just tell you that we've been the best of friends and allies ever since.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm sure that you bonded on an incredible level. But I mean, you skipped right past weed. You went to the hard stuff, That's pretty incredible.
Well, he came to me. He had already been smoking pot with his friends.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But he came to me specifically wanting to know about LSD, because he knew that I had written a book about it, and I knew about it, and I was only doing what fathers have done for ages with respect to alcohol or other intoxicants. I was trying to introduce him to something in a way that would be a positive experience, which it certainly was.
I bet that was. That's pretty incredible, So your day is spent doing what exactly, Steve? I mean, continuing the cause, staying a future farmer of America or Canada, or do you have other aspirations for the future?
My most immediate aspiration is that in 25 days, I'm going to begin the Kubby Vertical Challenge, which is to ski 2 million vertical feet in one ski season. Now, that's the equivalent of doing a descent down Mount Everest every day for 100 days.
You're going to do that one ski season?
I'm going to do it in a ski season to demonstrate that although I use cannabis in large amounts every day, I can still ski safely in extreme conditions, blizzards, 30 degrees below 0 centigrade, and not have any accidents, not have any injuries. I skied 1.3 million last year without any accidents or injuries. So that kind of blows the amotivational, you're a threat to everyone myth out the window. And people have to ask themselves, how is someone who has a deadly form of cancer that everyone else has died from within a few years and is now in his 30th year at age 59 skiing 2 million vertical feet? And the answer is that there's a miraculous medicine that people need to study and learn a whole lot more about.
That's a
be
huge...
allowed to study and use.
That's a testament right there. You've got this form of cancer that most people, I just want to reiterate this. I know you just said it, but I want to make sure that people are hearing this. You've got this form of cancer that people normally succumb to within a couple of years. You've kept it at bay for 30. And
Yes.
you have this incredibly motivated life where you're taking on the world, you're doing all these incredibly active things, you're breaking boundaries, and it's as a result of having access to marijuana, to cannabis, to the right kind of it.
Plus, I've gone and argued my own cases and won. And you have to ask yourself is how some pothead amateur can go in and defeat a professional prosecutor. Well, maybe we are growing brain cells, just like the scientists are saying.
Well, I know it is. Listen, I've smoked a lot. I used to smoke a lot of weed every day. I loved it. I was abusing it, but it was just in an effort to get to the good stuff, because when you're somebody like me, you get the good stuff every now and again, and it's like a game of numbers, unfortunately, and I just know.
I want to reiterate that the best pot is always available to those who do the most for the movement.
Well, what do I need to do? I'm almost feeling like I should get back into it again, because when I was smoking weed, I had some of the most creative, powerful experiences in my life, with the most movement in my life, the most advancement in my life actually took place while I was actively smoking marijuana, and what made me stop was just not being able to get access to the good stuff anymore, and just kind of having an incredible amount of side effects from the crap I was smoking. So I stopped altogether, and I haven't been able to experience the joy, the creativity, and the enhanced use of my mind, because it's no longer a part of my life. I was kind of succumbing to the viewpoints that the government was pushing, and I was becoming very paranoid and anxious as a result of the crap I was smoking. So what do I do?
Again, get online, log on, tune in, and take over.
I'm trying to. It's something that I'm definitely interested in.
Just find activist groups that are doing something to promote medical marijuana or the legalization of marijuana. Just plug into those groups, get involved, show up. You'll meet people.
Now, is this something that I can plug into by going? You have this other website, AmericanMarijuana.org. Is that kind of a...
That's the best way to meet people, because you see there's a forum there.
Uh-huh.
You can go into forums, meet people.
No.
There's also links to other activist organizations on that site.
So that's a good place to start for folks out there listening to us speak right now. You go to AmericanMarijuana.org. That's your site too, right, Steve?
That's the site for the American Medical Marijuana Association, of which I serve as the national director.
Okay. People can go there and begin to network with folks that are in this movement, find out what they can do, and perhaps find a little of the best weed in the planet through their association through you. Now, that shouldn't be the primary goal or reason, but, I mean, that might be an afterthought, right, Steve?
More than a few activists have gotten involved just out of a desire to get some good connections. But these are wonderful people, and their cause is a just cause. And the more time you spend with them, the more fulfilled you'll be, because this is a very special group of people. So if you want friends that you can talk with openly and honestly, and people that have a positive vision for the future, get involved with activism.
I'm voting for you, man. When are you running next time, Steve?
We formed a party here in Canada called the Free Canadian Party. We're going to be running candidates. I'm not going to run, but we're going to certainly do everything we can to get people to recognize that the government is lying about marijuana. They're lying about their right to arrest and confiscate and jail people. And this war will be over, just as every other war has been over. And when this war is over, those people who were just following orders are going to be held accountable for the harm that they've done to millions of families, millions of children who had to grow up without a father because he was in jail, wealth stolen from families and forcing them into poverty, millions of people suffering and dying from cancer needlessly just because they're being deprived of this cancer-fighting medicine. So this will pass, and when it does, it'll be just as dark a history as the Inquisition, but people will finally understand not to put their faith in government, not to put their faith in politicians, not to engage in begathons from Congress and the Senate, but to in fact reclaim the authority over their life in each and every aspect of their life.
That's a beautiful thing. And this is coming from a guy that smokes weed, and admittedly, you said, large amounts every day. And this is how well-versed you are. I mean, it's just, you can't get more proof than that. I just don't get it. I don't get it, and you're an inspiring guy.
Well, there is a little more proof, and that's when I ski 2 million vertical feet. You can't bullshit a mountain.
That's true, man. Where are you talking about this feat that you were undertaking? Is that on your site, Kubby.com, too?
Well, we're going to be posting it real soon, but I'm doing it at a world-class resort in the Canadian Rockies called Sun Peaks. In fact, the Austrians are going to be here just in a couple of weeks to train. It's a big mountain with lots of vertical and a perfect place to go for the record. And
when you set out on that particular day, right before you go topside, will you just burn a huge bone or what?
Well, again, it's going to be all season long, and you'll see me burning a joint on every chair ride, just as I did when I did the 1,000,000.3, and you'll see people smiling and waving at me because this is a very cannabis-friendly place.
Everybody's smoking up there.
Well, I wouldn't say everyone's smoking here. I would just say that Canada is a lot more tolerant, and as long as you're not being obnoxious, people don't give you a problem.
And another thing that just is making me incredibly jealous, just and as a silly aside from all of the serious business we're talking about, when you're done here, you're just going to go happily smoke some of the best weed ever and go about your day, and here I am stuck in the doldrums of normal life, It's like you get to live on this level that is so precious and a beautiful thing, and I'm stuck down here,
Well, now you know. There's a better life. You don't have an excuse anymore. Come out to Vancouver.
I might have to, my friend.
I have to wind this up. I've got other people and places to go, but it's been great talking to you, and all the best to you.
Thanks, Steve. You too, man.
All right.
Talk to you later. Bye. Steve Kubby. Steve Kubby, awesome fella. I'm pretty motivated by him, as I was saying there. It's just an incredible story of triumph, the success over the government. And can you imagine going in this guy's basement? I mean, this is a book that I'm going to read, The Politics of Consciousness. So, like you said, you can pick it up at Amazon.com or Loompanics.com, Loompanics. Check out his website, Kubby.com, and also start to network with folks that are in the movement. I'm going to really start doing this, because I know that there's a movement here in D.C. where I'm broadcasting from. And there probably is where you're listening to this. So go to AmericanMarijuana.org and see what you can do. Here's a member of the Show and Quotes Army to help support the larger army of love that would love to just smoke some of the real stuff and live a happier life. Man, I am so jealous of that guy.
Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off.
Craig Coleman.
Let you turn things on or off from anywhere in the room. Just plug
Craig Coleman
in the television, lamp, stereo, almost anything you want to clap on and off.
Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off.
Craig Coleman.
Craig Coleman
is available at Meyer, Perry, Hills, and Osco. Get yours today.
Thanks for listening to that Craig Coleman Show and Quotes random guest interview. A CCSIQ RGI.